Microsoft and Xbox looks like potentially could have saved Perfect Dark. But they chose not to. And you know what? With these particular situations, I can understand a little bit why. What's going on, you guys? Gaming Addict here. Coming at you with another video. Perfect Dark. You guys know, if you've been following this channel for a while, if you've been following the podcast, I actually was excited when I saw that particular viewing ship of Perfect Dark at that June showcase, or E3, or however you want to pronounce it these days. You know, it did turn out that a lot of that wasn't even part of the game, and that is a practice thing in the industry that I feel like needs to be, you know, kind of adjusted a little bit. I don't feel like you should be showing, you know, portions of the game that, you know, vertical slice to the consumer to that degree when you know that that's not going to be part of the game itself. And I get it. That's besides the fact we're not even really talking about that. But, you know, for a while, people were excited on what are we going to see with Perfect Dark? What are we going to see in terms of how Perfect Dark looks? Is it going to look anything like that we got? We do know that Crystal Dynamics jumped in and helped, you know, the initiative as well. There's a lot of aspects that went into that studio and a lot of questions that happened. And for the most part, even though that we heard rumors that Perfect Dark was in a really bad situation and, you know, the initiative lost mad extreme talent in the industry, no one really thought the game would get canceled. But then, you know, a couple months ago, that's exactly what happened. The game got canceled and the studio got closed. And a lot of people are just looking into this. That's like, what's going on with Perfect Dark then? You know, why did this game get canceled? What happened? And I think a lot of things went into this that led to where it is now. Microsoft spent a lot of money on making the initiative. Microsoft spent a lot of money in hiring talent. They spent a lot of money on developing Perfect Dark. And then not to mention they spent a lot of money with Crystal Dynamics coming in to help make the game. You know, these hiring an entire studio is not cheap by any means of the stretch of the imagination. So when the game got canceled, considering the only thing we really saw was that June showcase, and that was, you know, turned out to be a complete vertical slice, people kind of understood. They're like, okay, this game's not coming out. And, you know, it's disappointing because I really did look forward to playing it, but it's not coming out. But then we get this information. Does look like Perfect Dark was actually in the talks to being saved. And who reported this? Jason Schreier. Shout out to Jason Schreier. He always got that juicy take. But Crystal Dynamics was forced to cut staff and abandon the game Perfect Dark after failing to find a new funding partner following the game's cancellation in June. A potential deal would Take-Two Interactive Software Inc. to purchase the game from Microsoft Corporation, Xbox, and fund it and publish it collapsed due to the disagreement over the long-term ownership of the Perfect Dark franchise. Crystal Dynamics laid off an unspecified number of staff last week, although the company didn't explain why after negotiations with multiple parties, including Take-Two, were unsuccessful. So pretty much they had multiple debates on who owns the actual IP of Perfect Dark. Because even though that Microsoft doesn't necessarily use it, it is a household name, and a lot of gamers, especially older gamers, know that name very well. Running late game studio Crystal Dynamics, a division of Embracer Group AB, was forced to cut staff and fully abandon the game Perfect Dark last week after failing to find a new funding partner following the game's cancellation. Embracer had close to striking a deal with the video game publisher Take-Two, because keep in mind, Embracer did buy Crystal Dynamics from Square Enix. So Take-Two Interactive Software would purchase the game from Microsoft Corporation, Xbox, which owns the rights. Take-Two would then fund and publish the game, but the talks collapsed, at least in part because the companies involved were unable to come to terms with a long-term ownership of Perfect Dark franchise, said the people who requested anonymously because they were not authorized to speak on the sensitive negotiations. So essentially what's going on here, for people that don't know, is I'm willing to bet that Microsoft was willing to let them publish this game and own the publishing rights to this particular Perfect Dark, but Take-Two was not willing to let that happen unless they own the actual game, the actual IP. And most likely how these kind of scenarios go is after a certain amount of time, they can either buy back the publishing rights from Take-Two or, keep moving forward in terms of that. Because we see that happen in the industry all the time. Representatives for Embracer Group, Xbox, and Take-Two all declined to comment. Perfect Dark announced in 2020 was planned to reboot the series of the same name which debuted in 2000 for the Nintendo 64. The modern project was developed by a brand new Xbox studio called The Initiative and ran into some early struggles before bringing the veteran firm Crystal Dynamics to co-develop the game. A trailer revealing the game in 2024 was well received, and the studios hired a new director shortly after. In June, as part of the mass layoff, June shut down The Initiative and said publicly that it was canceling Perfect Dark. The developers, the game, were given the opportunity to find funding elsewhere. So it does look like Microsoft was willing to let them go look for funding elsewhere because Microsoft's not doing it. So it is kind of like on the wrong of Microsoft and Xbox to want like all of the publicity of, strengthening the Perfect Dark IP, but not funding it any further. And then keep in mind, Microsoft probably already put hundreds of millions of dollars into this game over 5 years, over, getting all these key point people into the industry to come and work on it. So I can understand when it comes to that. And, I remember when this happened too, when, they officially announced that they were bringing Crystal Dynamics into the fold because they needed people to co-develop. And I actually think that concept's great. Have someone co-develop a game because I feel like in the long run, that's going to actually mean a lot. So in July, as part of the mass live somewhere else, leadership, the Initiative, and Crystal Dynamics spent the following 2 months hunting for a publisher and wound up in negotiating with multiple parties. Take-Two, the company behind 2K and Rockstar labels, was interested in funding the game, but the deal fell through as a result. Last week, Crystal Dynamics said it was laying off a number of staff, although the company didn't explain why. Last year, Xbox announced plans to shut down the Japanese studio Tango Gameworks, maker of Hi-Fi Rush, but wound up instead making a deal for the publisher Krafton Inc. to salvage the company and purchase the franchise. So, look, I think when it comes here, it's going to be easy to jump on Microsoft for this. I do think that it's fair. It's fair to criticize Microsoft and Xbox for this because at the end of the day, this is a huge point of content. Like, Microsoft should be the one that's funding this. Microsoft should be, but they already put a lot of money into it. And if you guys think these companies are trying to, kiss more of that money away, no. It is interesting that other companies are interested. I will say that. It is interesting that other companies are looking into, what Perfect Dark could mean in the future. And it's really interesting that Take-Two wants to buy the Initiative of the Perfect Dark. Now, keep in mind, this is more than just the video game licensing. If you had Perfect Dark, you could make movies with that, action figures that the movies went off, comic books if you decide to go that direction, novels in general. Is a huge, massive, revenue stream that you could go off anything related to this. So I can understand why they would want it, but I got to be real with you guys. I'm on Microsoft's side on this one because it's like, if you want Perfect Dark, if Microsoft's not willing to sell it, they're not willing to sell it. You can't bully a company into selling an IP. You license it. You do what everyone else does. You license the game, and you use that license to continue to play the game. And if it's a successful venture, then, maybe that could lead to a purchase. But here's the thing, and this is where I will agree with Take-Two. Why do you want me to pay? If I was Take-Two and I'm like, why you want me to pay for all of the risks when it comes to on the back end of this Perfect Dark? We don't know how much of this game was actually made. For all we know, we're sitting on here on that's like a very small percentage of money to get this game over the finish line. Maybe like a year to 2 years of development. Microsoft clearly put the foundation work in this game, so I can understand Microsoft's points. Like, look, you you want this IP, but it's like we actually put a lot of money into this IP. And then Take-Two's probably like, look, you want us to build up this IP, we got to talk about ownership now, because let's say they actually do get this over the finish line. It becomes a massive success. Take-Two has just doubled the value of Perfect Dark by making that game a massive success. And now Xbox has more cards to go into this. Now, I don't know anything like behind the scenes on stuff like this. I don't know if there's like a middle ground that can keep, maybe Microsoft takes a smaller percentage. But at the end of the day, they did put a lot of money into this. Microsoft's trying to make that money back too. And I think people need to understand that too. This is not a white and black kind of thing. There's a lot of gray space when it comes to this. And I understand Microsoft, you can't bully a company into selling a franchise they don't want to sell. You can ask them for it, and maybe they could have had, struck a deal where it's like after a certain amount of time, they are able to buy the franchise on an agreed allotment on how much money, and Microsoft can approve or deny it at that time. But then once again, if they were to make a game or two on Perfect Dark, and they did bring it back to the modern audience, made it blow up, got it to where it's like a collab on Fortnite, you'll be paying probably double or triple off of a lot of Take-Two's work, especially if they make multiple games. If they make one, it's probably 50-50, Microsoft and Take-Two, because Microsoft's put a lot of time into it. Then again, we don't know how much actual game has been developed. I don't know how much they were in post-production where they're essentially making the game. So a lot of aspects to this game and to this situation I think people aren't thinking of, and that's fine. Look, this game looks amazing. This game felt amazing from what you saw on the screen, but we found out all of that was vertical slice, so it's hard to tell what the game was actually looking like realistically being developed on. But anyway, that's it for the video, man. I got a nice little video I'm gonna make for you guys tomorrow. You guys might want to hit that bell icon. But anyway, tell me what you guys think. Do you think that's something going on in this Crystal Dynamics? Do you think that they should have saved this? Because I kind of agree with Xbox. You can't force a company to sell something they don't want to sell. But anyway, put in the comments below what you guys feel about this. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button. It's always appreciated. You can always sub to the channel. We make weekly content over here. And be sure to go down there, man. Comment section. I read those. I appreciate all the support you guys give me. And until next time, this is Gaming Addict. I'm out of here. Peace. I ain't gonna lie. I want to play that Perfect Dark that I saw. I want to play that bad.